All right, squad. Thanks for coming out tonight. Kayla, good to see you. Or at least thanks for signing in. I know it's the black square. How's everyone feeling today? Feeling all right? Made it through the week so far? Everyone see the open workout that we're gonna get a chance to tackle this weekend? A few head nods, a few folks are like, I prefer not to see it, but basic movements. We got some burpees, we got some dumbbell going overhead, and we got some lunge steps. So not like we didn't just do all those things on Tuesday this week. So we'll be plenty warmed up, ready to rock and roll. So Saturday, we'll be kicking things off with that in the app. That's where you can go in and find a heat time to work out. And you can go into the Google Sheet for judging, cleaning, all that fun stuff. So everybody will have somebody to watch them, count their reps for them, clean up the floor after they're done. And we'll have a nice little celebration on Saturday once we finish up 15 minutes of work. Adam actually from the evening classes tackled it this afternoon before the 5:15 class. He's flying out tomorrow, so I got a chance to watch somebody do it. The first rounds go really fast, and then it just is like super slow, very consistent from there. So it'll be a fun one. But glad everyone's here for Mindset 101 for tonight. So just like class, we usually like to kick things off with a question of the day. So we'll have a question of the day for tonight. Question for today is, what's one good thing that happened to you today? One good thing. It could be the smallest thing, it can be the biggest thing, doesn't matter. It's your personal perspective on it. So what is one good thing that happened today? I will say, I'll kick things off. Having a workout that is going to be manageable for Saturday. I was very happy about that. I was like, we always get worried about space and equipment and everybody's this and that, but I was like, hey, we'll be okay. It's gonna be a good workout for Saturday. So that was a good thing for me of like, I think everybody's gonna have fun, be a good workout for Saturday. But what are some of the good things we got going on today? And Kayla, you can drop yours in the chat.
I had a really good protein smoothie for breakfast.
Nice. What'd you put in it?
I actually was at a coffee shop, so I gotta tell you.
Oh, even
But it was
better.
good.
Even better. Nice.
Yeah, mine was gonna be 8 clean today.
Clean today?
Yeah, 8 pretty clean today, no snacking or anything.
Oh, nice. Feeling pretty good about it?
Yeah, we've been on a roll with our clean eating. So
That's
Shout
awesome.
out Chelsea.
Yeah.
Woo! What else we got? What are some good things happening today?
I came home from the 5:15 a.m. class and my family has made me coffee.
Oh, they did. Nice. Do they, is there a specific way that you like your coffee?
Coffee black.
Oh, it's classic. I like
But
that.
it's nice when it's already there. You know?
Oh, yeah. Don't have to worry about it yourself. Yep. What else we got?
I didn't murder any kids right now.
There you go. That's a big one. Everyone survived, came home. Kayla got a lot of steps in at work. She got 13,000 steps in. Oh my gosh. That's quite the number of steps.
I finished up the project before it rained today.
There you go. At work.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it was about 4:30 here. It just like rolled in. Any other good things?
Feel like I'm recovering from maybe like a long endurance race.
From your 50 miles of running, you finally recover. Even though you continue to work out, you still feel like your body's coming back a little bit. Yeah.
Just tax your body a little bit or a lot.
Yeah.
Especially like your endocrine system.
Oh yeah.
You know, like your T levels. So, you know, I'm finally like feeling more and more like myself. Like,
Good.
Went for like a run today and getting back into the swing of things.
I'm surprised to hear that you want to go running again. That's impressive. So it's good to get back into doing things you enjoy. That's for sure. Yeah. Good. Anything else? So when we start looking at this concept of Mindset 101, it's something I love talking about. I feel like it's what I've studied and worked through over the last number of years. So looking at the field of sports psychology and figuring out how athletes can use this and all sorts of folks, I like this topic because I think it's very relatable for folks and something that you can immediately put into practice. around how you can use it to not only improve what's going on in the gym, but also improve what's going on outside of the gym. So my next question for you is, when you hear the term mindset, what are 1 to 2 or even like a phrase that comes to mind, or when you think of or hear this term mindset? Because I think it gets tossed around a lot of articles about it now, a lot of reels on Instagram and carousels and all sorts of good stuff, books about the topic. When you just hear this general generic term mindset, what comes top of the head for you?
Self-talk.
Self-talk. Exactly. Yeah. How we communicate with ourselves.
Determined.
Determined. I like that. Yeah. So the type of self-talk we might have.
Maybe being purpose driven.
Yeah, purpose driven. So what's it guiding me to do? What's it kind of directing me to do? We'll talk about that a little bit, of how it can be very sneaky, where sometimes we feel like we don't even have control over the actions or decisions or behaviors we engage in, but usually there's a little thought or some self-talk going on there underneath it all. So I like that. Determined, purpose driven, a little bit of self-talk. When I think about mindset in its just simplest form, it's really like, what's the conversation like that's going on in your head? Whether we like to admit it or not, we're constantly communicating and talking to ourselves throughout the day. They've even tried to estimate how many thoughts that you have over the course of the day. Does anyone have any idea how many thoughts you think you have from the time you're waking up and conscious till the time you go back to sleep? It's a lot. Some people would tell you like 40 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So it is just a radio station that is on repeat. And what's interesting about that is when we start to think about, whew, that is overwhelming, the amount of thoughts I've got, the amount of conversations I'm having, the story that's unfolding, or I'm telling myself in my head, are we even tuned into and aware of it? Because so many of us over the course of our days really just try and go from one thing to the next, just check the things off the to-do list, get through the day, get back to sleep. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're having this conversation with ourselves. So got a quote from Gandhi here. I really like this one because I think this kind of starts to bring to life this idea of, we've got these beliefs, we've got these thoughts, we've got this conversation that's unfolding in our head, and how do they lead one to another? So Gandhi says, your beliefs become your thoughts, thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And so the first piece we've got here is understanding this relationship between beliefs, thoughts, and emotions, and then actions. There's actually some research out of the psychology field around this, where all of us have these deeply ingrained held convictions, these beliefs that through experiences, through upbringing, through just the way we were born, we have these things that we feel to be true. And from there, that really influences the way we perceive the world, the way we think about the world, the way we think about ourselves, the emotions we experience when we see certain events or going through certain things. And eventually that leads to what we would call our behaviors, our actions, our decisions, what we actually do with all of this information. So when we start to think about this idea of mindset, conversation that's unfolding in our head, we realize there's probably some deeply held beliefs that are impacting the way we think about situations, and then what we do as a result of that. So we'll take a simple event here. Let's say you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off. What is the first thought or emotion that might pass by or jump into your head when that happens to you? And I will say my Northeasterners have a certain perspective with people cutting them off in traffic versus Midwesterners versus probably even Southerners, because everybody's got a little different piece of this. Vengeance, right? How do I run this car off the road? How do I maybe clip their bumper and just make them start spinning around? They deserve it, right? So how many of us would say that's probably something that jumps into our head right away? It's like anger, frustration, right? So those are the emotions we tune into. The thoughts of like, that's a terrible person. They're just like god awful, whatever it might be. And it's so funny because I know I've accidentally, or maybe not accidentally, cut some people off before. And it's like, oh, I've been in their shoes. But there's some sort of belief around that of like, hey, people should drive a certain way on the road, and you should use your blinker, and you should signal, and you shouldn't cut people off. So we have a belief that sort of sits underneath. And then when it happens, we have these thoughts that we don't even realize are popping into our head, or the emotions, because all of a sudden you just feel that fit of rage, fury, etc. And you're like, whoa, what just happened? Probably can say the same thing about some of the stuff you experience here in the gym. You see burpees programmed for the workout. What's the first thought or emotion that pops in your head when you see burpees in the workout for the day?
I guess I'm not working out.
Yes, I'm not working out today.
I'm not coming.
Not coming, right? Not for me. Yeah, that's not thrusters, right? So sometimes we do the comparison games. Same thing with the Echo bike. So we've developed some beliefs around some different movements in the gym of how we believe burpees are, how we believe the Echo bike is, how we believe thrusters are. And so when we see these events, we have certain thoughts, we have certain conversations that unfold in our head. So this is just a nice little diagram to help us understand. We've got these beliefs. Sometimes we're aware of them, sometimes we're not. They usually lend themselves or lead to having different thoughts and emotions that we experience. That's usually where we tune in and start to notice, like, oh yeah, I had a thought about burpees, or I had a thought about that person who cut me off, or work, or family, or whatever, or some emotions. And eventually we get some actions, things we either want to do, we don't want to do, that type of stuff. So for tonight, what we're going to be taking a peek at is the conversation that's unfolding in your head. Some of the thoughts and tuning into how we might be thinking or perceiving certain situations, and how reframing, how changing the language can dramatically, I would say, influence the actions, behaviors we want. Because all of us would love to be happier, healthier, more fulfilled. And so there's certain actions, behaviors that can help us do that. And if we backtrack it, we realize the way we talk to ourselves, the way we think about certain things can help us to work towards those goals. So your first task for today is, we got this let's practice on the bottom there. So I've got a prompt for you. It says, what if I never? And I just want you to start brainstorming and thinking through, write a couple different things down for what pops in your head when you see that phrase, what if I never? And it can be thinking about future things that you maybe want to work towards or accomplish, or certain things that you're currently working on, or certain things that maybe have a little bit of doubt associated with them, but fill in the blank. So maybe it's like, what if I never look the way that I would want to look? Or what if I never get the promotion that I'm searching for? What if I never, whatever it might be, fill in the blank. So a little introspective process here. And you won't have to share these, so don't worry about. If you got at least one, good, we'll be able to play and run with that. So look at one or more, multiple of the things that you wrote down, and we're gonna kind of showcase how thinking and the conversation we have directly influences the emotions we have and how we work through that going forward. So when you're looking at some of those different statements you wrote and you read it through in your head of what if I never, fill in the blank, what are some of the emotions that are elicited when you read those statements? Thinking about like the spectrum of emotions could be like frustration, anger, happiness, joy, anxiety.
Inside out, going through my mind.
Inside out, you're like, right? You're like, which emotion was that? Oh yeah, anxiety. We met that one in Inside Out too, right?
We did.
Yeah. Any other emotions?
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt for sure, right? Regret even. So it's amazing how even just looking at this statement and seeing this what if I never puts us in this frame of some anxiety, some self-doubt, some regret, etc. And so it's amazing how the way we talk to ourselves, the words we choose are important, because it does directly influence how these emotions might come up. So what I want you to do now is I want you to think about or look at the statements you have. I want you to cross off the word never. Just cross it out. And what I want you to do now is I want you to read back those statements without the word never and just see and notice if that changes anything in the perspective and some of the emotions that are elicited from reading those responses. See a few head nods. So what sort of emotions are elicited by reading the statement again without the word never in there? Hope, yeah, hope. Happiness, maybe, right? Kind of future forecasting, this could happen. Yeah. Relief, even for some of us, yeah. So it's really fascinating how, even in this simple exercise, having one word be changed can change the dynamic of the emotions we experience, potentially what we take doing moving forward with that. And what's really fascinating is that our brains are kind of wired to set us up for failure, it seems like. And part of that is because our brains are wired to notice and remember information that we would deem to be a little bit negative or would be like a watch out for us, because our brains are constantly scanning the environment, making sure we're safe and we're protected. And anytime our brain interprets something that could be harmful for us or threatens kind of our livelihood, it goes into fight or flight mode. Same thing can be said for when we see information or see things from our experiences that aren't good, and we're like, oh, don't ever do that again, or don't move over here and do that. Our brain loves to notice and pick up on those things. On the flip side of that, if I ask you, like, hey, find the good things that happened today, for some of us, probably a really hard thing. You're like, I don't know, not a lot. More things went wrong than went good today, because it's just kind of the way our brains are wired. Same thing when we start thinking about some of our goals, aspirations, dreams, etc. Your brain wants to go into this protective state of like, oh, if you really go for that thing, it's going to be hard, might be tough, might be challenging. So it tries to kind of protect us. So when we think about it of what if I never, it's going to bring these emotions in. It's going to kind of create some of that self-doubt and anxiety and say like, I don't know if we should really go for that. But if we change the language that we're using to talk to ourselves, you can generate some of that hope, optimism, things that might help push you forward. So it's amazing how just changing the language and playing around with words can make a difference in that regard. So that was just a simple exercise to showcase that. So the question is then, if we realize that the language we use and the way we talk to ourselves matters, how do we go about even tuning into and being aware of what the conversation is like that's unfolding in our head? What do you think? How do we get more tuned into and more aware of what I'm saying to myself? Because I might have those types of thoughts of like, oh, I'm never going to do this, or I'm never going to do that. I should do this, I should do that. I need to do this, I need to do that. We're not even aware that we're having that conversation. So what do y'all think? How do you think you can tune into the thoughts, the conversation, the frequency that's going on in your head?
A lot of people do meditation, things like that.
Yeah, meditation's a big one, right? Getting just some quiet time to be like, oh, what is going on in my head? Do I have time to even realize the way I'm talking to myself and if it's helpful or if it's not helpful? That's a big one.
Affirmations.
Affirmations, people love that too, right? So having specific thoughts that I want to put in my head. I'm aware of that conversation. Yeah. Some folks appreciate journaling or writing things down, just like whatever's going on in my head, just need to get it on paper. Something about the process of writing and seeing it can be helpful. So they either use prompts to kind of guide the journaling, or they just free write. Where's my brain want to go? Some people like to just, it's almost a form of meditation, but just create some quiet time where I'm going for a walk by myself, like no podcast, no music, just walking and seeing what happens. Maybe find some space in my house where for 5 or 10 minutes, try and, kind of block out everything else and just see what's going on. How do I process? It's harder and harder in today's day and age because there's so much that's grabbing our attention, from phones to things we want to watch on TV to significant others and to work and all these things. So everything's pulling our attention and trying to keep us distracted from even being present in what is going on in my head. So step number one is this idea of being more aware. So do I want to do some meditation? Do I want to go for a walk? Do I want to journal? Do I want to just create space and quiet time so I can dive in and see what's going on? Because once we see what's going on, then we can actually go through a process of figuring out what to do with that. And so what we'll do is let's go ahead and flip our page to the backside where we're going to look at how do we adjust our mindset. We know it's based on these beliefs. Those can be difficult to change, but there's a process and a way to do that. But if we're looking at how we can change our mindset, got a 3-step process for you that can be helpful to notice when the conversation is not being very productive, and then what we can do to think about processing, shifting, or changing it to maybe make it a little bit more productive for us. So step 1, we have to identify the story we're telling ourselves. And I think when there's things that we're working through that are challenging or difficult, it can be really helpful to write things down, because for something about putting your thoughts on paper makes it a little bit more real and allows us to play within that space. So here's what I want you to do. At the bottom there, we're going to all work through this one together. So we'll focus this one on health and wellness. So if there's something that you're trying to work on or you'd love to improve or impact with your own health and wellness, whether it's the way you eat, the way you move, maybe it's the way you sleep, the way you recover, whatever it is, you probably have this idea or something that's kind of hanging around in the back of your head of like, I really should do this, or really need to do this. Whatever that thing is for you, if there's multiple of them, go ahead, write that down on the bottom of the page. So I've got a prompt for you there. It just says, I should. So for me, I would say I should sleep 8 hours a night. That is something I wish I could do. Doesn't always happen. I would also say, for me, it's also a food thing as well. Should be a little bit more thoughtful with the way I eat at times, especially when traveling for work. That one's tough for me. These are probably some of those conversations that are unfolding in your head that we feel like we've wanted to make an impact on or a difference on. So the goal with this particular exercise is to give you the steps that you can walk through, whether it's health and fitness thing or anything that pops up that you're like, definitely work on my mindset a little bit here. It's not helping me or it's not being productive in this moment. So if you've got at least one thing down that you can operate off of, the step number 2, just like we highlighted before when we did the never statements, like to tune into what's the emotion that we're experiencing or we're feeling when you hear, when you read out that statement. And this is why writing things down can be really helpful, because you can read it out to yourself and you can notice what sort of emotion is elicited. So pick one of your things that you wrote down and just write by it, write the emotion that's elicited or that you're experiencing when you read that. So when I say to myself, oh, I should sleep 8 hours a night, there's a little bit of guilt there. Sometimes even a little frustration, like, why can't I make this happen? Why can't I get it figured out? So whatever that emotion is for you, just write it down. It's nice to categorize it. Then I also like this next step, which is scale of 1 to 10. How strong would you say that emotion is? 10 being like, ooh, super intense, like totally feel it throughout my body. 1 being like, it's kind of there, kind of notice it, kind of don't. Rate the emotion. What sort of level? No right or wrong answers to that, just personal awareness. So we've put on paper the thought. We know what the story's like that's going on in our head. We've identified an emotion that's elicited from that. We've even identified how intense it is. The more intense it is, the more this next step can be helpful, which is taking a good belly breath. Because when we're starting to work through thoughts and conversations that are going to generate certain emotions, it can cause us to get a little bit anxious and stressed and kind of trap a lot of things that we're feeling up in our chest. So taking a big breath of, it's amazing how that sends a signal to our nervous system of like, okay, let's process this and let's work through this. So the next step is we're going to start to think about how do we reframe or potentially change the language that's going on in our head. So we've got this idea of I should, and I always think it's funny that people bring this up of the you should never should on yourself. So that's something I would highly recommend. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the word should to could. Change the word should to could. So all you're really doing is changing 2 letters to 1 letter. But then same process here, read it through. Think about what's the emotion that's elicited when you read it that way. Same, different, same thing there. You can also write down the intensity level. It's gone higher, lower, whatever that is for you. You take that breath. And after we've done that, we can switch could to can. So now we've moved from I should to I could to I can do this. Once again, notice sort of emotions are elicited when you experience that, when you read it out. Notice the intensity of it. Notice if it's shifted, changed, done anything different. Sits a little differently with you. I will take one final step here just to play with another word choice here, but what if you changed can to will? See what that does. See how you notice how that impacts you, what sort of emotions are elicited and generated from that. Once again, notice it, write it down. This is the beauty of writing things down is as you're putting your thoughts on paper and the conversation is coming to life, you can start to adjust and tweak and say, you know what? Is that actually true? Is that actually what the way I want to talk to myself? Is there a way I can make this more effective? And I can change words and realizing the language can be important here. Same thing for when we think about the workout that's coming up, or when we're thinking about different choices for our health and our wellness and our overall fitness. A lot of things we believe or talk to ourselves that we either can't do or too difficult or whatever it might be. And the language we use can be helpful to shift and adjust when it comes to our mindset. So the question then is, how do we actually make this stick? Because I can tell myself I will do whatever it is, fill in the blank, but actually following through with the actions is tough. So if we're looking at how we can then leverage mindset to solidify this, the next word that I want you to write on your page is because ... and fill in the blank with something that comes to mind. So you've got a statement down there that says, I will blank, write the word because, and now we start to leverage some motivation. We start to leverage our why. We start to leverage things that can help to keep us on track or move us towards the direction we'd like to go. So when you think about the why behind whatever you wrote down, what sits underneath that? What makes you want to engage in that behavior, that action, or work towards that? And so it's kind of fun then when you start to play that game of, oh, there's something underneath here. We start tapping into some of our beliefs and our whys and the things that drive us to help with some of our actions and some of our behaviors. And you start to realize, oh yeah, like this is possible. 1, 2, I've got some motivation to help me get there. And then we start to build the practices and habits that'll help us to continue to chip away at it. So that's how we can leverage mindset to not only change the language that's going on in our head, but then hopefully drive us in a direction that's going to be more helpful and beneficial. I certainly have noticed this, and I think this is what's really fun is, you know, when you're working out and you're in these different environments, you start to realize that your mind is trying to protect you and keep you safe. So usually it's like, hey, don't do this, don't do that, you should rest here, or this or that. And you start to tune in and be aware of it. And then you start to realize like I can change some of the language that's going on. So I get to go work out versus I have to, or I get to go pick up my kids, or I get to go to this job versus I have to, or I need to. These little small shifts in the way you talk to yourself can be a really powerful tool to help, not with just health and wellness, but just overall happiness and whatnot, I would say as well. Because when we start looking at the things we have control or influence over that are going on a day-to-day basis, I would argue mindset is one of those things we do have way more control over than maybe we even think. We don't have control over the person who cuts us off, or the weather, or what's going on in a variety of areas of the world. But we have some say and some control over the conversation we have, how we think about situations, how we perceive them, and if that's helping us or hurting us, which is why I think mindset is such a fun topic to play around with and dive in. So the last question I've got for you then is, as you're thinking about the topic and you're looking at how we work through manipulating some words, reframing things, what's one thing that maybe stands out to you from the session for tonight? Or what's something that you're taking away as you think about mindset and as you think about how this plays a role in your life, or how you might use this moving forward? This can be anything. Oh, that's a big one. Yeah. Being kind to yourself. What's that conversation like? Is it productive or not productive? And can I make it more kind? And sometimes writing some of those things out can be helpful, because you're like, oof, would I say that to a friend or my loved ones? Like, probably not. So why am I saying it to me? So then I can go back in and adjust it. I like that.
To say how we negotiating with ourselves.
Mm.
Oh my. A
Yeah.
lot of times it's not really where we're talking to, more like. We know what we need to do.
Yeah.
And we talk ourselves up, like you said with sleep, you might like, I need to go to sleep, but then you're like, but watch this game or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or like, I gotta eat healthy, like,
Yeah.
Chelsea's got me on this diet thing, right? And I'm like, dang, I wanna eat that so bad.
Right, yeah.
I'm like,
You start playing that
game.
game. Yeah, you start negotiating with yourself,
Yeah.
start playing the game, but then if you work through it, you're like, okay, there's something going on underneath that.
Yeah.
I do want to eat a certain way or do certain things.
Right.
And then I can see if I can recall that. Cause yeah, when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're anxious, it's really easy for your mind to take the easiest route possible, because it doesn't want to spend a lot of time or energy figuring it out. So yeah, it's a big one. Any other thoughts?
I think it's interesting. Negative reinforcement
Mm.
normally is what motivates me.
Yeah,
It would be in a week,
yeah.
but probably if I switched it to positive enforcement, it's a little bit better.
There's certainly a time and place that emotions like anger, frustration, and guilt can move you towards the path that you want to go. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It certainly does. A lot of athletes use that. I mean, you watch athletes, they get so pissed off and fired up, and then they go out there and do their thing. Is it sustainable? Not always the case, but it's one form of motivation to get us going. But yeah, play around with different types of motivation that can get you going. So like that. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for coming out on a rainy Thursday evening. Appreciate you jumping in for Mindset 101. We'll continue to tackle topics every month. I think next month we're going to be tackling Sleep 101. So a lot of good information on how we can improve our environments, how we can improve our process of going to sleep, how we can improve our habits and behaviors around that, because it's probably one of the foundational pieces of our overall health and wellness. We'll have all of our regular classes tomorrow. We'll pop the workout in that we'll jump in for tomorrow. Probably a chance to practice, get some hands-on with some of the movements we'll see on Saturday. And then Saturday, we'll have our big open workout. Should be a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to it. But thanks everyone for coming out. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. And we'll see y'all tomorrow or Saturday. See you later, Kayla.
Bye.
Yeah.